and welcome back to Chit Chat with two T's. I am your host, Counselling Psychologist jvaldez. And today with me, I think this is probably the most interesting guest to date. Not that all of my guests are not interesting. I said to date, she's the most interesting. Okay? By virtue of who she is and what she does. And Onika, I do think you are our first Tobagonian on the show. Yes.
Yes.
And you always remember your first. So, welcome, Onika Henry. Yay!
Thank you so much. So now I feel extra special because I'm the first Tobagonian on the show.
Yes, repping strong. So I'm so excited to have you here. Thank you for saying yes. I'm so excited that I don't want to say the wrong thing. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Sure. Okay, so Onika Henry is the name. I am from and live in Tobago. My first degree is theater arts with psychology. We just put that out there.
So much sense. It makes so much sense now.
Yeah, okay, good. And interestingly, with that background, I worked in HIV education for a while, developing communication materials, designing workshops that use theater in education and drama in education to teach about HIV prevention. And it was in that experience, in that job, that I got interested in human sexuality and the decisions people were making about their sex lives. And that led me to study sexology. And so I have a master's degree in human sexuality, focusing on education. Went on from that to get further training in clinical sexology so that I can work with couples and individuals around any kind of issues, challenges, and dysfunctions they're having with their sexual health. And so I like to say I have a master's in sex. I mean,
yes.
Do keep in mind that
it.
they often say those who can't do teach. I don't know.
I don't know.
So that's me in a nutshell. I like to also blend my expressive arts background, that theater arts background, with how I work with clients and how I work with students and how I teach and how I do workshops, etc. And so my tagline, is sexology meets expressive arts. So that's me in a nutshell. I'm a single parent as well. I have 2 adult children. I love food. I'm a foodie. I could probably be bribed with food.
I always say that's how I could get kidnapped. If with food,
like I could get catch.
Normal. Yeah.
So that's me in a nutshell.
That's a very big nutshell. That's like the biggest nut. Like, what is that, macadamia? Not Brazil nut. It's like, it's a lot happening. Thank you. So how do we refer to you? What would your title be? Is sexologist okay? Or do you have other titles by which you go by? Sexologist? Okay. All right. So our first sexologist, our first Tobagonian. So many firsts today. I'm very excited. So we can start with what is in your cup. So again, I'm really loving this, it's really more of a thermos than a cup. It's pretty, right? My God, Sister Rachel. Hi, Rach. Gave me this and it's very cool. It tells me the temperature of whatever's in the cup. So right now it's just it's water because I had like a big smoothie before recording this. So it's just water and it's 27 degrees Celsius, which sounds hotter than it is. I just want to say that. Right? So that is what I have in my cup. What is in your cup, Onika?
Right. So my cup, I'm going to bring it close so you can see what my cup looks like. So
my goodness.
Those are varieties of vulvas. Vulvas, that's what you call the outside. We actually don't see vaginas. They're the interior part. So my vulva cup, courtesy Afro Gypsy Yoni Services. She is what you call a yoni hydrotherapist, somebody who steams vaginas.
Yeah. Is she local?
She's from Tobago, but she's in Trinidad most times, so she has an office and a space in Trinidad. I also do some of that work with my clients. But in my cup, I actually have herbal tea. So there is a mixture of all kinds of herbs in here that are for general health as well as for female reproductive health. So some nice.
What bush you have in there, girl? What bush you have in there? I know about herbs. I know about bush.
Yes, yes. Well, it is. I'm trying to be academic for the people.
No,
but yes, but it's
we
really
are
bush
for the
tea.
people. Yeah.
It really is bush tea. Let me see. What have I here, boy?
Yes.
What did I put in here? I put chaseberry, or
Right.
also known as vitex.
Okay.
I have nettles in here.
You have nettles in there?
I have nettles in here.
Wow.
We actually use both. We use nettles in steaming as well, steaming the genitals.
That I know. Yeah.
Yes. I have nettles in here. What else? I have alfalfa in here. Alfalfa, yes. And I have something called prickly ash in here. What else do I have in here? I think that's about it. I went to my supplier of herbs. I go to him. He has a space in Scarborough. 21st Century Foods, I think is what he's called.
Okay.
Because that's where I purchase my herbs in bulk when I'm doing genital steaming as well. I do that sometimes to prepare the pelvic area for any kind of treatment. And we can get into that if we have time for that. Ooh, but I got these herbs recommended by him. So that's what I have in my cup this morning.
Okay. That is also probably the most interesting in my cup and cup. I thought Kiara was doing well. She had the imaginary prize because she had the biggest cup we've ever seen. And I think you definitely have the most interesting cup we've ever seen. And I'm very happy that you having you on the show allows us to, we're normalizing mental health discussion, but we're also normalizing, talk of sex, and sexual reproduction and sexual health, because it's something I think generally, we tend to stay away from, in a public space, unless of course you're just being crude. And I think that, it's not something that we tend to do. So I'm very happy that you're here to also, because you're talking about it very freely and very comfortably, which is something that a lot of people don't do, particularly within your local space.
Yes.
So I appreciate that about you. And tell me so that was what it was in your cup. Literally, what's going on with you figuratively? What's happening with Onika?
Gosh, I am currently in a number of trainings that I chose to do to add more tools to my toolbox when working with sexuality. And because I'm also working through the body, through the soma. Let me use the word soma. It's a Greek word which means the body in its entirety, including the brain. In the Western world, we tend to separate the two. So we say body and we don't think about the connection with the brain or with the mind. But the word soma means looking at and treating the entire being, including the body and the brain and the rest of you. So I am currently doing some integrative somatic therapy training. I wanted to learn some more tools to work with, through, and on the body when it comes to treating trauma. I am also doing a sex therapy certificate. I'm doing that training now, even though what I do is already therapeutic.
Right.
Yes, I am not specifically trained as a sex therapist. I do lots of sex therapy things. So I wanted to add some additional tools, which would include looking at sexual healing from a more cognitive framework, and so adding some more mental health tools to my toolbox. And so I'm doing that at the moment, and I'm also finishing up my training as a somatic sex educator. So once again, teaching about sex, teaching about sexuality through looking at and treating the entire body. So looking to learn how to align mind, heart, and body, considering how we tap into data that we get not just from brain up here in the head, but our heart brain, our gut brain, looking at our nervous system, etc., in terms of how it relates to our sexual health and sexual function.
And this is in addition to having your practice,
having my private practice,
working elsewhere, and mommying. Is that what you're telling me?
To me, yeah. So I see clients, but I've slowed that down a little bit because I really want to finish the training, but I'm still seeing clients. I have a private practice, yes. I also work part-time with two organizations. One here in Tobago, so I am part of the Tobago Festivals Commission Board. So that's managing festivals here in Tobago. And then I work for a Canadian institute where I'm actually also still a student. I'm finishing up my somatic sex education training there. But I work there part-time as the BIPOC liaison. BIPOC as used in North America, Black, Indigenous, and people of color. So looking at how I can be the connection between students of color and a staff that is predominantly white, as we have more people of color into the field. So yeah, that's it. I'm not doing too much mummying. I'm not, maybe there's a big fish in a small pond. But I'm not doing too much mummying because my children are adults. So they basically take care of themselves. They're still annoyed that I'm no longer cooking regularly. They even complain to their grandmother. They complain to their grandmother, who called me and asked me why am I cooking for the children. I said, the adults who know how to cook. What?
Why not cooking for the children, the woman grandchildren? That's
listen to me.
Yes.
But yes, that's what's in my cup.
And that's a lot. It's a big cup. And coming back to what you said, about, the whole idea of the soma as the mind and the body, because I know that in therapeutic circles, we do have that term, psychosomatic, referring to, but it's kind of like you separate it there too, because you're specifically saying the experiences of the cognitive or within the mind being manifested within the body, so I really like that they're just using soma to encompass everything. So that's a lot. I like it. Do you feel overwhelmed with that? Because it's a lot that you have to manage.
Yes, most definitely. At the moment, I am overwhelmed, and so I've been using my somatic tools to settle my nervous system, settle my body, to slow down deliberately. And it's interesting, slowing down, even when things feel overwhelming, and even if things feel as if they're getting to crisis.
Yeah.
Slowing down makes so much sense, so that you listen deeply, so that you feel deeply, and you're able to make better decisions or see more of your options for how do I resolve this, how do I manage this, how do I cope with this. And so those skills have been really, really helpful in managing what is overwhelming, what is stressful, but not a stress that is going to the point of shutdown. I think it's a good stress. You know what I mean? It is enough stress for me to be in my learning zone.
Yes. Yeah. So enough for you to function, but not lose your mind.
Yes. yes. I am deliberately not going to lose my mind. So, learning to let go of some things, learning to say no more often, learning to say not yet.
Right.
That's part of how I'm managing this.
Shouting at me, but no problem. Probably shouting at Ricardo too. So, speaking of, not being overwhelmed and not being too stressed and getting it to a particular point, kind of is a good segue for our next segment, which is what's boiling your water? What has boiled your water? What is annoying you? What is a pet peeve of yours? Talk to us a little bit about that, especially, I guess, in general, but also if you could, in relation to your field and people's perception of it. I'd love to hear that.
Yes. So, this is an interesting question because I had an interview, was it last week? Yes, last week. Well, it was actually a week and a half ago, but the recorded version of it was released just last week.
Yes.
Right. And one of the things that boils my water, that annoys me, or at least irritates me or destabilizes me in my field, is having to deal with, and I'm going to be honest here, with religious institutions and religious persons when it comes to sexual health and sexual function. One of the things we spoke about in that interview was the pushback and the challenge of implementing comprehensive sex ed in schools.
Yep.
And a lot of the pushback is coming from our religious community.
Yeah.
And it is such unfair. It is such a sad and I can't even think about the word. I suppose because I see clients who come into my space with their bodies presenting as if they've experienced physical trauma when they haven't experienced physical trauma. It gets me angry, I guess. It gets me angry. Because I am treating this person who has not experienced a physical assault on their body, they have not experienced a physically sexual assault on their bodies, but their bodies are reacting as if they have. And they all come from like that purity culture, or
Yeah.
a religious background that
Mhm.
has used their scriptures to demonize sex,
Yeah.
that have used their scriptures to control people's bodies and to determine that people must fit into these very narrow ways of being and experiencing the world and of being sexual. And none of them match how human beings really are.
Mhm.
It's not reflecting the reality of the lived experience in folks' bodies, and how they experience and relate to themselves, to a partner, and to their sexuality. And it doesn't
Yeah.
have to be that way.
Mhm.
You know, I deliberately became certified gosh boy, like I always in school. But I deliberately I think that's just my lifelong thing. I'm a lifelong student.
Yes.
I did some training as a sex and faith facilitator.
Sex and faith. Mhm.
Yes. So specifically trained to work with Christian communities to create a sex positive Christianity.
Okay.
And I did that because one of the biggest pushbacks I received when I came back home from studying, of course, was from the churches.
Yeah.
When it comes to to sexual health and sexuality. And so I said, listen, I need to feel competent to respond responsibly and to respond well and to respond with accuracy when they present these beliefs, these attitudes, these scriptures to justify how they want people to live their sexual lives.
Yeah.
And so that training gave me an understanding of the history of the church, the history of the scriptures, which scriptures have been misinterpreted, twisted, and I like to say weaponized. And I say weaponized because it hurts. It really hurts people's sexual well-being, their sexual wellness, their sexual wholeness.
Yeah.
And so I needed to understand the theology. I needed to be able to understand which scriptures are being used and how and why, so that I can then give a counter argument, a counter view, counter evidence that this is not or is not the intention of these scriptures. This is not how your being, your creator wants you to experience your sexuality. And I could use scriptures to back that up. So yeah, that still gets me really annoyed because it's just unnecessary.
It's a big thing. It's a big thing. And I like the fact that you said you went and you did the sex and faith certification, because it is important to be able to meet people where they are. Yes. And so, it's one thing, because I'm Catholic, so I definitely understand to a large extent the message that goes out. I understand to a large extent the intent, but I also understand how, even the best laid plans, or the best of intentions can sometimes end up going awry. And so, as opposed to even with sex education in schools, similar, and I'm bringing this up because I would have recently done some work, some training on suicide, some presentations on suicide. And it was saying that one of the biggest myths about suicide is that if you talk to the person about it, then they'll want to do it. And I think it's very similar when it comes to sex education. A lot of people think if we talk to the children about it, then they're going to want to do it, but they want to do it anyway. So maybe we should try to, educate them as best as we could, so that in the event they're going to be safe. Yes. So yes. I do think that is something that has come down through the generations, from institutions, yes, religious institutions, but also from people. Because I know people that don't really, older people in particular, who also don't necessarily maybe subscribe to a religious, an identified, I should say, religious belief, but certain things, certain cultural norms, yes, they're not going to let go of, so that kind of comes into play with that. Like, we don't talk about that, so we don't talk, yeah, we don't talk about sex, and we don't talk about feelings. We don't do that here. It's a quote Black Panther. We don't do that here, so I think it's important that you haven't just said, what, this makes me angry, and forget them. I'm not gonna even try to get them to change their mind, but you actually went in the direction of, okay, let me see if I can meet these people where they are, and at least try to, give them a different perspective. And I really, yes, I appreciate that.
Yeah, because part of the model that many sexologists use to assess someone's sexual wholeness and wellness is looking at and assessing the mental aspects of their sexuality, the emotional aspect, the physical aspect, the energetic aspect, and the spiritual aspect. That is part of how we evaluate people. And for some people, learning how to reintegrate their sexuality with their spirituality is necessary in order to enjoy their sex lives. So it is actually critical for healing for some people that they reimagine, that they reinterpret, and they come up with a new concept of how their creators see sex, and also understanding that they can tap into their own intuition, their own relationship with their god or their goddess, whoever that may be, in order to figure out what is right for them, what works for them, what will bring them the most pleasure in a responsible and safe way.
Responsible and safe.
Yeah, so it's not just about meeting people where they are, but it is also recognizing that is an aspect of sexuality.
Yeah.
For some people, sex and that act is a very spiritual thing. It is part and parcel of how some cultures actually see sex.
Yeah.
For some cultures, the two aren't separated. It's not, they go together. Yeah. So for me, it really was being able to help folks reintegrate and integrate all those aspects of their sexuality so that their parts, their minds, and their bodies could be in alignment.
Because we're holistic beings.
Yes. Yeah. So you're not in this conflict. My body wants to do this, but my mind.
Well, right. And I know that's something that we've talked about in the young adult to adult community in terms of, faith-wise. That's not something that's spoken about, but then you're kind of automatically expected to flip the switch. When you're in a relationship or when you get married, specifically when you get married. So we're not going to talk about it before in the aspect of the community. We're not going to talk about this except to tell you that you can't do it. And then, we don't have, I don't think we have honest conversations about it, or even from that perspective, why we would want you to try it this way. That we don't have those conversations, but then it's automatic. You get married and you're supposed to know how to be a spouse in that regard, and just make those babies. Just do that.
Yeah, and it doesn't work like that. There's no switch that you just turn on and things just work.
Yeah. So do you see that disconnect you talked about earlier in terms of, because of my spiritual background, my faith background, my mind is telling me one thing and my body is telling me one thing, and that causes problems within, not just relationships, unmarried relationships, but within those unions as well?
Yes, very often, and most times it affects the female in the partnership negatively if you're talking about a heterosexual couple, because what happens with women's bodies when they embody, when they take on, they know and they don't do this for all their lives.
Yeah.
That programming is in the soma. So when they get into a marriage situation where they're expected to perform sexually, that no is still there. That deprogramming has not happened.
Yeah.
And so the body, the soma, is reacting as if I need to save you. Yeah, I need to save you because you're committing a great sin.
Yeah.
It has not caught up to the fact that this is safe now, it's allowed now. You have to do a whole deprogramming. And so that shutting down means for women, sex is not just uncomfortable, it is often painful and sometimes impossible because penetration is not happening. They may experience what we call vaginismus, where the muscles of the vagina shut down and don't allow for any kind of penetration, not even a finger, not even a Q-tip. I've had clients who could not insert a Q-tip or their finger.
That is crazy. And what do you see for men? Because we don't really talk about men's mental health, especially men's mental and sexual health. We don't talk about that.
Yes. And so for men, they're not as, unless they have been in a space religiously where they are shamed for their sexuality. Men don't usually have the problem because in those communities, it is as if the women are supposed to be the gatekeepers. They're responsible for the men's sexuality. Men can do whatever. Men are entitled to women's bodies. They're supposed to please. Yeah. So he's looking forward to it because he knows, it's all about him.
Yeah.
He's there to get. But if they're in a background where shaming was part of it, or maybe they were caught peeping at porn or looking at sexually explicit material, or caught in solo pleasure, aka masturbation. If there's enough shaming, for the male, what happens with him is that he will present with early ejaculation, also known as premature ejaculation. But I never use the word premature with a big man. Like, come on,
right.
It's such a judgmental term. You know what I mean?
It feels so harsh.
Yes, it does. It does. It's a mature person you're talking about, so it's not premature ejaculation. It's early.
It's just early.
It's early, and it came. It came before you really wanted it to.
Right.
Right, and that is of course associated with the shame. I need to get it over and done with because I'm doing something shameful, something I'm not supposed to do. So that programming is also in men's body. So that is one of the challenges that happens with men. Sometimes it may be delayed ejaculation where they can't experience ejaculation at all. Sometimes it's erectile dysfunction, because once again the body is trying to save you from doing something that's shameful, that's been programmed into your body for all these years as something shameful. So the body is saying you have to shame, you can't do this. Trying to save you from going to hell
or wherever. Yes, it's so amazing that I always tell people, especially clients, that I am a context person. And so, when you come to me for a session, I need background. I want to know about your family. I want to know about your friends. I go deep. And, this just kind of brings it all back to the point that we're so integrated with our environment. And there's so many things that people think will not affect you in the present moment or in the future, but it really can, and severely so. And so what for you is one of the or several of the common things that you see in terms of mental health trends and sexuality or inability to freely practice your sexuality?
Right. So when we assess the mental aspect of someone's sexuality, the kinds of questions I would ask is so that covers knowledge, and that covers beliefs and attitudes when we're assessing the mental aspect of part of it. And so I would ask questions like, what is sex? So at that definition and knowing what that is, 95% of my clients have to pause. They don't know how to describe it, what to say. Or they just don't have that comfort level with the vocabulary and communicating about sex. I would ask, so when does sex feel right for you? And once again, nobody's ever thought about that. When does it feel right? Is it at a particular time of day? Because in your mind, there are shoulds and shouldn'ts.
Right.
When it comes to sex, because you've been taught that. Shoulds and shouldn't. So when does it feel right? In a particular relationship, at a particular age or context. And then I may ask, how does sex feel right? Is there a particular way in which it needs to be done, a particular process that it needs, or steps it needs to, the experience needs to follow for it to feel right for you? And how does your soma know that this is right for you? Can you tell when something is not right? And if you experience a not right in your soma, do you still go ahead because you want to please your partner, because you think this is what is expected of you? This is what you shouldn't do. Once again, the shoulds and the shouldn'ts. And then we would get into the folks who have the religious background, the belief about what scripture says, or about what your God or your creator expects. And I approach that very delicately, because I ask, is that something that you want to explore, that you want to, because where did you learn that, and why do you believe it? Why do you accept it? And if you have accepted it and it's not working for you, maybe perhaps you want to explore what else could be. What is your personal walk and your personal relationship with this creator that you believe has given all these rules and regulations? What is that personal interaction or relationship like that you can explore, that may then change your attitudes and your beliefs, which would then be transferred into the soma and how you approach and how you negotiate and the trust that you make. What are your values around sexuality? What are your values around relationships? Are you living your values? Do those values serve you, and how? Wow. And so those are the kinds of explorations that we would explore when it comes to the mental health aspect. And then, of course, mental would also look at, what do you know? What is your knowledge? What did you learn in school? How does do you know how your body works? Do you know what turns you on and what turns you off? Do you know how to protect yourself from STIs, unwanted pregnancy? Do you know what to do if sex is painful? Do you know what to do postpartum after having a cesarean section? If you have scar tissue, do you know how to treat it? So that knowledge. is also part of how I would assess where someone is from the mental health aspect of sexuality. Was that make sense to you? Did that clear?
It makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense. I think you went you were very detailed, and I actually didn't realize that you would also deal with, I didn't think about women in terms of like postpartum either. That is very interesting. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so oh gosh, postpartum can be a big thing because your hormones are just not yet settled. They're all over the place. And so your desire for sex or your desire for certain kinds of sexual contact would not be spontaneous, will not be there, maybe a whole lot less. Because you're taking care of yourself, you're taking care of baby. And when your body is under stress, for every emotion that you experience, there's a biochemical response. And you know that. So sadness has a biochemical response. Anger, joy, love has a biochemical response. So all these substances are being released into the body based on your hormones and based on your emotions. So in a postpartum space, when you have certain biochemical processes happening and certain substances released, they may actually be binding to the cells that are responsible for sexual arousal and sexual function. So those cells are just not available because you're under high stress and your body is producing all these chemicals that's binding to those receptor sites that's part of your sexual function, and they're just not open to receive anything else.
Wow.
And so you have to deliberately make an attempt to change your mood, to change your emotions, to change how your soma is experiencing the world in order to change those biochemical processes. So those cells are now free to bond with the substances that activate sexual arousal, that activate desire.
So
a true mind-body connection.
So that's kind of like where we have to woo. We have to re-woo our partner. It's not just a case of, a couple weeks pass and it's time to lime. We have to recreate the mental and emotional conditions so that the physical condition could...
Yes.
All right, cool.
Yes, most definitely. Thanks for putting that in there and for sharing that perspective. That's exactly what needs to happen. So it's not just an automatic switch. You really need to create, and if you have a partner, of course, co-create the environment to change. Co-create the external environment so that you change the internal environment, which would then mean that certain biochemical processes can happen, which will then allow the body to receive pleasure, to respond to pleasure, to recognize pleasure, and to be interested in pleasure. And in addition to that, particularly for women, they may not be feeling the same way about their postpartum bodies. Is this body attractive? Do I feel attractive in this body? And bodies change, not just due to pregnancy, but even as we age, our bodies change. And so we always need to be rediscovering what feels good, rediscovering what feels right. Even without pregnancy, that needs to be done. But particularly with pregnancy, things shift. Lots of things shift, and they don't go back to how they were before. A lot of it doesn't, and that's not a bad thing. It's just different. So an example, I've heard from women who they had to go searching again for where the G-spot moved to. They found it, but it wasn't in the same place.
It was a cinch.
Which makes sense because a whole human being came down that
passage.
A
whole human being shifted everything.
Everything. So now you need to go and find, okay, where shift to? What feels good now? How does the pressure applied here need to change? How does the pattern here applied need to change? How does the speed, the pressure need to change? So that I can feel that pleasure there again. Yeah? Makes sense?
Yes, 100%. And so that's a lot for you to manage, I think. For me, it's one thing. I'm like, okay, clients come in, it's mental, emotional. But you're like, soma.
Yes.
It's mental, emotional, body. And of course, that's a lot of energy, I think, that you take in. Yes. How is your mental health? What do you do to relax? Like, tell us about that.
Right. So I use ritual as a container for preparing myself for working with people, for working with clients. And so there are ritualistic things I do with myself to ground, to from a spiritual perspective, accessing energy outside of myself. So I'm not using my own energy.
Right.
So I'm drawing energy from around. Otherwise, I would feel totally drained. And that was a challenge I had at the beginning of my practice. It was draining.
Yeah.
I would see one client and I'm like, I'm not too sure I can take another one. And I see two clients and I said, okay, all right, that's it for the day. That's it done, literally. And so having a ritualistic container where I am drawing energy outside of myself, where I am preparing my mind and my body for the client, and then at the end of it, another ritualistic process to close it off, and then I give myself time between clients to recover. So when I set up my schedule, there is some leeway time between seeing my last client and seeing next. So I'm not doing back to back to back.
Right.
Yeah. I check in, I ground again, I cleanse my space, I cleanse myself, and I would let go of the last client.
Yeah.
Get to myself, re-energize, and then leave time again to
fully present.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then prepare for the next client closer to when that client will be arriving. I take time off, so in my schedule, I give myself a long weekend most times. So I do not work on a Monday. I don't work on a Monday. Even if I work over the weekend and I see clients over the weekend, Mondays for me just feel like I need to take Mondays off. And I may go to the beach. So when everybody else is in that rush, I am chill.
You're chill and headed to the beach. I love it.
I'm heading to the next direction. Traffic going so, I go in.
You're going so.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. And I use my own somatic practices, my breath work, my stretches, and to be a little edgy, I have my own mindful erotic practice, which I find really helpful.
You want to tell us about mindful
Yes, I do. I was hoping you'd ask.
She said yes. I was hoping you'd ask. Tell us.
Yeah. So it's a lovely term that could also be called erotic embodiment.
Okay.
But it is really just fancy masturbation. It's like fancy solo pleasure. What we added to this time of solo pleasure is creating a space or an environment that feels good, that feels welcoming. I'm a very sensual person, so I like to know all my senses. So I will have some kind of essential oils in the background, or incense. I may have special linens that I'm spreading on my bed, and maybe some artwork around, whatever. I prepare my space. I set an intention. What do I want out of this practice with myself today? Do I want to explore particular kind of pleasure, particular body part? Do I simply want to deeply listen to my body, pay attention to sensations? Do I want to tap into some spiritual wisdom? Whatever it is, I set an intention for the session.
Wow.
Then I would do some breath work and some grounding, maybe some movement to get into my body, to feel my body, to connect with my body, and just pay attention to sensations. Slow down and do a meditative practice. So I'm scanning my body, checking my emotions as well, just seeing what's there, what may want to be attended to. And then I would do deliberate full body touch from head all the way down to I'm connecting to every part very slowly, and I'm listening. And then I go with my intuition. What does my body want now? What is the body calling for? What does it need? Follow that intention. Complete that practice. Keep doing the kind of touch or movement or absolutely nothing but breathing for that entire session. And when I feel complete, once again, I check in with my body, see if anything has shifted, what has moved, what is my intuition saying? Do I want to journal about that?
Wow.
And then I close off the session. So that could be anywhere between 15 minutes to 30 minutes. It depends on what happens or what my body wants at that time. I may or may not experience orgasm. I may or may not bring myself to orgasm. The idea is that this is a mindful practice that brings into and integrates my sexual energy and my sexuality as part of my self-care, as part of holistic wellness and wholeness. And it taps into what I think we all know is a really powerful aspect of our human existence. So that sexual energy, whether you use it with a partner or not, whether you are asexual and you're not into sex per se, you still have that erotic energy, you still have that your sexual reproductive organs and system in place, and you may just choose to decide to transfer or transform the energy into something else. But it is a type of energy.
Yeah.
That is there, that's available for creativity, for guidance, for wisdom. So that's how I teach it. That's how I've learned it. And that's how I experience it.
That's absolutely amazing, because when I listen to my body, it's usually like, yes, have that tahina, or have that ice cream. So this is this is amazing. I love that. So I guess I have to start listening to my body a little bit more.
Yes.
And see, besides food,
yes.
what is happening. Yes.
Yes. And sometimes I want to throw in a suggestion here. If it doesn't make sense, throw it out. If you slow down and listen a little bit longer, listen a little bit deeper, your body may actually tell you what flavor ice cream it prefers today.
Yes.
Or whether saying, no, not ice cream, let's try something else.
Yeah.
And so sometimes what I try to do is, like, when I go to the grocery, I let I listen to where I feel a pull of my body towards a particular type of food or particular space. Mm-hmm. And I scan and I wait for that pull. And forget the airy-fairiness about that. Think of it into the physics, that solid things give off energies and energy waves. That's just a physics thing.
Yes.
And your body's energy waves may be in alignment or not in alignment with the waves that this thing is giving off, that this object is giving off, including people, which is why in our country we say, I'm blood and taking, I'm blood and taking.
I am a vibes person. Yes.
So what I'm saying is, you could also use those vibes for other things in your life. Is this food good to put in your body now? Yeah, is this a good energy to put into my digestive system at the moment? Yeah, is this a good person to sit down with and chat with right now? They may not be a bad person, just
might not be good for you in the moment.
And this moment. Yeah. So a suggestion. Try it out, test it out, see how it works.
I'm going to. I know that my boyfriend will not be pleased with me, because it's just going to be an excuse for me to get all the food that I want. But it is what it is. I'll be like, Onika told me, I have to listen to the vibes. So that's what I'll be doing. So you gave us some really good things today. I think my mind, I have to go and sit and process everything that I learned today. This is truly amazing. And Onika, I thank you so much for making the time to be with us. I've learned so much, and I'm hoping that this will not be the last time that we chat with you. I would love for us to do this a little bit more. So thank you so much for being here. I hope you appreciated being with us.
Yes, thank you so much. I always appreciate opportunities to talk about sex, because we don't talk about it very often, and I recognize just how important it is for lots of us. We don't realize how important it is until something goes wrong in that part of our lives.
Correct.
So I'm always glad to share. I think it makes people feel good to know that I can talk about this and not be judged and not be ashamed. And that makes me feel good. So I'm glad that you invited me. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. And just for even allowing us to learn that there's so much knowledge and facts behind this field. I really appreciate that. So as we get ready to close, is there anything you'd want to tell us? Do you have anything that's coming up that you'd like us to know about with regards to you? How can we find you if we need you? Tell us.
Okay, so you can find me on social media, specifically Facebook. You can find me on Facebook. My business is there. I haven't posted in a while because life is just overwhelming. But OHenry Consultancy on Facebook. You'll also find me on Instagram as OHenry Consultancy. So my business Instagram page is there. My personal page, if you want to just kind of get a little bit about me outside of my work, it's Otasha18. So that's O and Tasha18. It is not a politically correct page. Just know that. I say whatever I want, however I want, whatever.
That's your personal page.
That's my personal page. So folks can find me there, follow me there. I always try to post a lot of interesting things when I can. You can also send me a WhatsApp. I try to educate through my WhatsApp statuses. I have not done it in a while, but I have themes. So there's Self-Care Sunday where I talk about sexual self-care. There's Mental Health Monday where I talk about that intersection of mental health and our sexuality. Then there is Tech Tuesday. I talk about the intersection of technology and sexuality. So the sex toys, the technology of the body.
Right.
Wednesday is Wacky Wednesday, all the humor jokes around sex and sexuality. Mm-hmm. Thursday is Throwback Thursday, sexual history, the science, how we've been researching sex, things that people believed in different cultures in the past, the artwork in the past about sex. Fridays is Freaky Fridays. Oh my gosh.
Oh.
I shall say no more. Freaky Fridays. I post all kinds of things on my WhatsApp.
Where can we find this? This is your WhatsApp.
Yes, I'll give you the number just now. Saturday is Soul to Soul Saturday, where we talk about connections and relationships and that kind of thing. So my WhatsApp, 381-3049. I'll say it again, 381-3049. So you can save that number whenever you want to reach out with a question. Once I have the time, I will try to respond or direct you to resources where you can get information. So that's where you can find me and how you can reach out to me. And I will end with encouraging people to follow their pleasure. And I'm not talking about debauchery and doing things that will cause you or others harm, but checking in daily on what feels good and giving that to you and being compassionate and kind to yourself, because there is power in pleasure and there's healing in pleasure, and pleasure can actually be a way of rebelling against and resisting against and being resilient in a space when things can be uncomfortable and traumatic. So pleasure's power, pleasure's healing, following pleasure.
I love that. There's power in pleasure, there's healing in pleasure. Perfect. Onika, thank you so much for being with us again. Onika Henry, sexologist. Thank you for taking the time to be with us on Chit Chat with 2 T's. Again, I'm your host, jvaldez, and it has indeed been an honor and a pleasure. And we look forward to seeing you guys next time. Until then, keep normalizing mental health discussion. Bye. And see you.